Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. Just touched a little bit about Ohio State. We're going to switch gears, talk a little bit about Tennessee and Georgia Tech. So Tennessee, Georgia Tech, I have scheduled a home-and-home series for 2026-2027. This is kind of exciting news. Tennessee was scheduled to play Nebraska for 2026-2027. However, that series got canceled. Nebraska dropped out. So Georgia Tech is going to be the replacement. And these games are going to go on early season, September 12th, 2026, September 11th, 2027. And Tennessee's actually going to play Georgia Tech potentially at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which would be kind of fun. That's obviously not Georgia Tech's home stadium, but it is a beautiful facility in Atlanta. Has hosted national championship games, SEC championships. So that would be exciting if Georgia Tech does play there. Nebraska canceled their series, so it kind of sent Tennessee scrambling. Tennessee athletic director Danny White, he was pretty excited for this. He kind of said that he really appreciated Georgia Tech and just how they were able to modify their schedule. Georgia Tech's athletic director, Jay Blatt, his quote was, "As we continue to invest in and elevate Georgia Tech football, securing elite level competition is a critical component." And I think it's fun that these two teams were SEC opponents for a long time. There was a big rivalry here. Obviously, Tennessee and Georgia do have a big rivalry, but also Tennessee played Georgia Tech every year from 1954 to 1987. They played for 30 straight years. This is a big rivalry, and it's kind of fun that they're bringing it back. The last time they played was 2017. Tennessee won that game 42-41. It was an overtime victory. It was 2017, start of the season. They played at Mercedes-Benz, so that was really a big win for them. But that was an exciting series, an exciting matchup, and just something that's fun to watch. So I want to look at a little bit about Georgia Tech. I'm going to do a little mini-season preview for them. Georgia Tech had a really interesting year last year. They had a couple really solid wins. They did lose 4 or 5 games, but they almost beat Georgia. That game was really close. Overtime matchup, super exciting. They only lost by, I think it was 42-41, or it was 1 or 2. It was a multi-overtime matchup. So they competed well with Georgia last year. They competed really well against Miami. They almost beat Miami. Their only blowout loss per se, I guess, was they lost to Notre Dame by 18, but that was their biggest loss of the season. I think that really kind of shows how Georgia Tech has jumped back up a level, and I think there's really room for potential for growth here again next season. So they return quarterback Haynes King. That was a big time player for them, has played really well at quarterback for Georgia Tech the past year or so. Jamal Haynes, their running back, another big return, as well as wide receiver Malik Rutherford. So their offense is really going to drive this team this season. They do have a couple pieces returning on the offensive line as well. So there's really solid experience in the room. And these guys coming back again for Georgia Tech, that's going to be a team, an offense that could be scary. Their defense is going to be where it's going to be a little shaky, possibly. They've lost a couple guys. Their biggest returners probably D-tackle Jordan Vandenberg, 6'3", 300. Had about 23 tackles last year, only had 1 sack. But this is a guy that's a big run stopper, and that's what Georgia Tech's going to look for him to do this year, is stop the run, try to make that a really solid run game. Another player to look at on the defensive side of the ball is Jason Moore. Jason Moore is actually their highest ranked returning player. He graded out the highest during last season. He didn't really play a lot, though. They had some depth on the edge, and he wasn't one of their main guys, but he was their highest graded player that's returning on defense. So that's going to be somebody to look at as stepping into a bigger role for them on the edge and potentially making a big impact there on defense. That's going to be their big question, is how this defense will perform. They do have some tough games this season. So they have to play Colorado week 1. That game is, I believe, it's on the road. So they have to go to Boulder week 1. That's going to be a tough matchup for them to win. Colorado's another team with some question marks this season. So that's going to be an interesting week 1, is Georgia Tech at Colorado. What happens there? They have, I forget who's week 2. It should be a winnable game for them. But Clemson week 3, that's going to be a big one. I think by the end of the first month of the season, we're really going to know if this Georgia Tech team is legit or not. So they have Colorado on the road week 1, but then you have Clemson. That's at home week 3. So Clemson, if they compete well there, if they possibly eke out a win, I think that kind of shows that this Georgia Tech team might have a little more potential than people think. They also have to play Duke October 18th. I think Duke is kind of a sneaky ACC team. Had 9 wins last year. Manny Diaz's first year as head coach. Got a transfer in at quarterback Darian Mensah. That's going to be a team that might be a tough matchup for them to win, especially at Duke. But if they can pull that one out, they can pull out Colorado, maybe beat Clemson. I think this is a team that could look at. And then obviously the big game, rivalry week, is Georgia. It's back at home this year. They have Georgia at home. Could have beat them last year. It was a really close game. They probably deserved to win that game. They played really well, but Georgia still won. They're going to be looking for revenge this year, and I'm excited for that matchup. I think Georgia Tech's really going to come out, try to play really hard against Georgia, and that's going to be a team that's going to be interesting to watch. But I just like this series between Tennessee and Georgia Tech being renewed. Old SEC rivals, foes, and Georgia Tech's really beginning to come back on the up and up for football. I think this is a series that could keep their momentum rolling as they do try to add elite level competition and step back up into that limelight, into the spotlight. It's going to be interesting to watch, though. Georgia Tech, they probably have a really big range of their record, their season, how it's going to go. It's going to be interesting. They could be a 5 or 6 loss team hovering around 500, but on the flip end, if they get some of those key wins, I think they could be a 10-2 team or a 9-3 and compete for the ACC title potentially. We're just going to have to wait for Georgia Tech. I think this redemption story of Georgia Tech has been awesome. Obviously, kind of struggled for a long time in the 2000s, 2010s. Fs. They were running the triple offense still up to a few years ago. Brent Key gets hired as head coach, first as interim head coach, then as full-time head coach. Was an offensive line coach, actually, but decides to modernize the offense, ditch the triple option, really brings in some good, talented ball players. Haynes King is a stud. Had a couple guys that just were really good ball players for them. And I think this is a team that could have some potential, if they're able to recruit Atlanta. They're in really fertile recruiting grounds in Georgia. They have a unique kind of situation at Georgia Tech. And that's something that they could probably pitch to recruits, pitch to guys that are in Georgia as, a plus for Georgia Tech. And there's going to be guys that maybe, hey, this is something you can get on and hop on early. I think Georgia Tech's going to be one of these teams to look at in the next couple of years that's going to be really interesting on their trajectory, on kind of where they go from here. So we are also going to look at Tennessee tomorrow. I want to look on the other side of this rivalry, kind of touch on Tennessee and their potential outlook for the season. I think this is going to be a really solid series for both of these teams, and it's something I'm really excited for, is just to watch kind of, will Georgia Tech actually be back? Will they maybe even rise up to the top of the ACC? It's going to be something fun to watch, and it's going to be something to look at in the future as just kind of this improvement and the potential for Georgia Tech to come back as a program. So we're going to end our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast presented to you by the GSMC Network. Your support really does mean a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe and like the channel, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content, more updates. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little